Fischer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Kendall and General Brown, first, let me express my appreciation for the support shown in this budget for modernizing the Air Force's nuclear equities, including Nuclear Command Control and Communications, or NC3. These programs are absolutely vital, and they must be delivered on time, and I appreciate the commitment to doing so that is shown in this budget. As you both also know, Offutt Air Force Base was severely damaged by historic flooding in 2019 and is still in the process of rebuilding. I'd like to thank the Air Force for its support in the rebuild efforts. And General Brown, I was pleased to see an additional $286 million for the Natural Disaster Recovery Fund in your unfunded priority list for fiscal year 2023. Secretary Kendall and General Brown, can I have your commitments to continue to prioritize recovery efforts at Offutt and to look for opportunities to complete these projects as quickly as possible?
Yes, absolutely, Senator.
You have my commitment as well.
Thank you. Secretary Kendall, I remain concerned about the toll of both inflation and supply chain issues on the Department of Defense. How do you expect the increased costs of building materials to impact ongoing MILCON projects?
It is something we're concerned about. We're concerned about inflation across the board. Our biggest immediate concern is fuel prices, which have gone up substantially. And we're going to have about a $2 billion shortfall this year that we'll have to address through one mechanism or another. In the letter that we responded to Senator Inhofe and Ranking Member Rogers, all of us talked about the steps that we need to take. We don't know what 23 will be like yet, and we don't know how different aspects of the economy will be affected. So we're going to need to work with the Congress to make adjustments as we go forward. So we'll appreciate your support as we address this.
General Raymond, nice to see you.
Thank you.
Can you discuss the changes that are being made to the Next Gen OPIR program in the FY23 budget and how the new Resilient Missile Warning Missile Tracking Program integrates with this effort?
Yes, ma'am. It's critical. It's our number one mission, missile warning, missile tracking, and it's critical that we make this transformation, as I said, to get after two important realisms. One is that the missiles that the satellites need to detect are changing, and it's getting after the hypersonic glide vehicle and being able to detect and track that. It's critical to make that transformation for that effort. The other thing is that by diversifying the architecture, very similar to what we do with our financial portfolios and diversifying, you then reduce the threat in space to an attack that may occur. And so on both of those efforts are in this budget, we pivot from handfuls of very exquisite, very expensive satellites to an architecture that's more diversified to get after both the emerging class of missiles and the threat that currently exists in space.
So the plan is really to keep the Block 0 polar and the geo capabilities, but supplement them with the distributed architecture. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. The challenge that we face as we make this transformation or this pivot to a new architecture is we don't have the luxury of taking down what we have today and telling the nation we'll come back in a handful of years with a new architecture. So we had to develop a bridging strategy, and we looked at it. It's a risk-informed strategy to keep alive what we have for our nation as we make this important
do you still expect to have the first geosatellite in at 2025 then?
Yes, ma'am. It's
vital. It's vital.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Secretary Kendall and General Brown, what do you think the war in Ukraine teaches us about air power on the modern battlefield? I know we've heard some commentators argue that anti-air defenses have made sophisticated air power obsolete, in the same way that others argue anti-tank munitions have made armor obsolete. What's your view?
I begin, Senator, by saying that control of the air is critical to military success. And the failure of the Russian military to gain control of the air is a major contributor to the difficulties that they're having. On the other side of the equation, the Ukrainians have used the air defense systems that they had quite well. They've been able to keep them survivable against a threat, which I think says as much about the lack of capability of the Russians as it does about the capability of the Ukrainians. So we need to be careful about trying to learn too many lessons from this until we really study it carefully. But they have reinforced my views about the importance of air power, first of all, but that successful air power must be sophisticated enough to deal with the threats that it faces, including ground-based air defense systems, like the ones the Ukrainians are employing.
General Brown, would you like to add anything?
I would. Air superiority cannot be taken for granted. And to do air power anytime, anywhere, it's not only the airplanes with that will be airborne to go against other airplanes, but it's the ability to also take out the air defenses that are on the ground. And it's a combination of capabilities, and that's what we as the United States Air Force are focused on, to make sure we have the capability to do both and train to that as well.
And be prepared for possible more sophisticated encounters than we're seeing in Ukraine?
Most definitely.
Thank you, sir. Thank you both very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.